Well, once again, it has been far too long since I've uploaded a video, so to try to get back in the swing of things, today I'm going to be looking at a very simple game, but one that's quite significant, to me at least. Moon Patrol was the first video game I ever played. Well, I think it was. I must have played Space Invaders around the same time, but it was Moon Patrol that really sucked me in and stuck in my memory. I would have been but a tiny doddering old man at that point, maybe 6 years old, and I encountered the Moon Patrol arcade machine in a corner store while on holiday. It cost 20 cents per play, and that's where all my allowance went for the next several weeks. My allowance was not large, so 20 cents was a considerable investment, but I considered it to be well worth it. Well, up to a point. I have a very clear memory of somehow coming into the princely sum of $3 and having to decide what to spend it on. My first instinct, of course, was to pour it all into Moon Patrol, but somehow my sensible side won out, and I spent it on a Matchbox toy car instead. It was actually a military vehicle, and it came with a trailer carrying a missile launcher with tiny little missiles. At 6 years old, I was very much into the concept of blowing things up, so the toy won out over Moon Patrol. I remember it well. I also remember the buyer's remorse that struck almost immediately, as I imagined all the Moon Patrol fun I could have had with $3. $3, 15 games worth, the fun I could have had. Funny what sticks with you even 35 years later. Anyway, I retained fond memories of Moon Patrol, even though I didn't get a chance to play it again for many years. So now, at last, it's time to give it another go and see how accurate those fond memories are. As you'd expect from an arcade game released in 1982, it's fundamentally pretty simple. You control a moon buggy which is armed with two guns, one facing forward, one aimed upwards. The shoot button triggers both of them at the same time, so no need to worry about which one you want to fire. There's also a jump button which will get a good workout. You move constantly to the right, but you can slow down and speed up to some extent by holding down left or right. And that's it for the controls. It's simple stuff, but it works surprisingly well. As you move across the lunar landscape, you encounter numerous obstacles, and the way in which you overcome them actually has more nuance than you might think. Upcoming rocks can be destroyed or jumped over, and you need to speed up or slow down to avoid the bombs dropped by the aliens flying overhead, or shoot them out of the sky if you're skilled enough. The distance you can jump is greatly affected by how fast you're going, and once you've got the hang of things, you might find yourself constantly adjusting your speed in order to negotiate obstacles. There's a decent sense of momentum, and coupled with the moon buggy's surprisingly nimble jumping, you can feel really skillful once you start chaining things together. Given my complete lack of skill, I don't experience that very often. But honestly, as far as arcade games go, the difficulty of Moon Patrol is really pretty reasonable. You die in one hit, sure, but the game's designed in such a way that everything feels fair, and the difficulty curve ramps up nicely without ever feeling too extreme. As you progress, more new elements are introduced, and the stuff you've already encountered gets remixed in creative ways. Well, as creative as you can be in a game like this. Rocks double up, pits get larger, tanks start to appear. Eventually you start moving up an incline with boulders rolling down to greet you. The aliens flying overhead get more numerous and start appearing in mixed groups, which can present some challenges. I particularly like the aliens who drop bombs, which create new pits you have to jump over. It's a small thing, but it's pretty innovative gameplay for the time. Speaking of innovation, apparently this was the first game ever to use parallax scrolling, with the foreground and two background layers scrolling at different speeds to create the illusion of depth. Given how ubiquitous that became and how impactful it was, that's really quite a notable first. That said, overall the graphics are, well, they're not really that good to be honest. Technically they're fine for the era, and they work well enough, but that moon buggy, it looks like something I might have drawn at the age I was when I first played this game. The enemies and obstacles are functional at best, and the backgrounds aren't all that interesting. I like the fact that the mountains are eventually replaced with a classic sci-fi moon city, but it's still pretty crude. Low pixel counts and limited colour palettes don't preclude a bit of artistry, but there isn't much of that on display here. Even the explosion when you die is a disappointing blob of colour. Still, it all works well enough together. And I do like the animation, simple as it is. I remember being very amused as a kid by the way the wheels accurately follow the terrain as the buggy bobs up and down. That thing must have some pretty good suspension. And while the death explosion is a little lackluster, I love the way the wheels bounce off into the distance. The music and sound effects are, again, fine for the era. I'm not going to claim the music is anything special, but it is catchy, albeit repetitive, and it's occupied a place in my brain for decades. There are 26 checkpoints in the game marked A to Z, with every 5th checkpoint giving you a bonus score based on your time taken to reach it, which can be important as extra lives are awarded at relatively generous intervals of points, although you can only ever get 3 of them per credit. These extra lives, coupled with the moderate difficulty curve and the fact that the game is easy to learn and rewarding of skill, means that a talented player could make 20 cents last a relatively long time with Moon Patrol. Even I, as a 6-year-old, got my money's worth out of the game. Whatever skill I had though, has definitely deserted me at some point over the intervening decades. I'm just glad I didn't have to hand over a 20-cent coin every time I died replaying the game now, because I'd be a damn sight poorer than I already am, even if 20 cents doesn't have quite the same value it did back then. Fortunately, thanks to free continues, I was able to make it to Checkpoint Z. But that's not the end of the game. Once you've achieved that goal, it's time to tackle the Champion course. The difficulty is now ramped up further, and a couple of new elements are introduced. There's this sinister little space hopper that sits behind you ominously for a while, then darts forward. It's honestly not that tough to avoid, but shooting it up the backside is satisfying. Also, some of the pits are now home to these weird space plant things. They're not super impactful, but they do force you to make a good clean jump over them. Most importantly, of course, your moon buggy is now red, which is undeniably cooler. Apart from that, the Champion course is really just a hard mode, with enemy and obstacle placement ramped up to be hugely annoying at times. It's still not what I'd call unfair, but if the amount of 20-cent coins it would have cost me to get through the beginner course was enough to bankrupt me, the number it would have taken me to get through the Champion course of Moon Patrol could have funded an actual patrol on the real moon, even if I'd had to design a new lunar lander from scratch. But hey, I had fun. Obviously this game is dated, I mean hell, it's nearly as old as I am, but the gameplay really is solid. The controls are great and the levels are well designed, even if there's not exactly a whole lot of variety to it. I'm not going to say it's a game that will enthrall modern audiences, but as an early 80s arcade game, it's really something of a masterpiece. And actually, it's not the only masterpiece that the creators churned out. Moon Patrol was the breakout hit for developer Irem, who are best known for their later game R-Type, which is an absolute classic of the side-scrolling genre, and another game I have fond childhood memories of. Fortunately, when I came to play R-Type, it was on the Amiga, which really is good because R-Type was notoriously tough as nails, and if I'd tried playing it at the arcade, I'd have run through my pocket money in a matter of seconds. Well, thanks for watching. I'd promised to make a more concerted effort to actually upload more videos in the future, but I think by now we all know that's probably wishful thinking. But I do have good intentions, honest. And one minor announcement, YouTube are now allowing so-called super thanks in my country, so I've enabled them on my videos. What this basically means is, if you think I've earned it, you can choose to donate a small amount directly through YouTube by clicking the button below the video. And if you feel like doing that, I would be hugely, sincerely grateful. But please, please do not hand over any cash unless you can easily afford it. And I mean easily. Like, if you've already bought every Ferrari ever made and your Lamborghini collection is nearing completion, I'll happily take a couple of bucks off your hands. But if you've only got half a dozen Ferraris sitting in your garage and you're still saving for that Bugatti Chiron, please keep it for yourself. In any case, since I like the idea of voluntary contributions more than I like the idea of advertising, I'll be disabling ads on my new videos. I figure that the annoyance they were causing my very few viewers isn't worth the 2 cents a day I was getting from them. You know, it occurs to me that becoming a YouTube millionaire may not quite be within my reach. Oh well, until next time, get off my lawn.